Hello, dear audiences, and welcome to the Conference of Terrorism, State and Non-State Sponsored Versions. First of all, I feel it is necessary to explain to those who are not familiar with the Terrorist Brain Institute. The Terrorist Brain Institute has held a series of meetings and conferences in various dimensions of understanding the actions of the Mujahedin-e-Khalq with the aim of revealing the terrorist activities of this group. It has prepared bulletins to make people more familiar with the various issues and aspects of the MEK terrorists and has made them available to the public on the Institute's website at terroristbrain.com in Persian, English, French, and Albanian. This institute has also prepared a series of articles by academic elites and journalists familiar with the MEK and published them in various news agencies. These articles are also available to the public on the Terrorist Brain website. Okay, for more information about the terrorist group of Mujahedin-e-Khalq, let's say that the People's Mujahedin Organization, a terrorist group with several names like MEK, MKO, PMOI, NLA, and CRI, was established in 1961. Their primary goal was described as fighting against global imperialism, especially fighting the United States and fighting against the colonialists of the Eastern and Western blocs, and their approach was armed struggle. After the victory of the Islamic Revolution, the leaders of the MEK, by nurturing their thirst for power and monopolization to achieve absolute power and ruling Iran, faced the want of people which clearly rejected them. With their process of brainwashing and changing the ideology from Islamic extremism to Marxism, they made their members obey their orders without question, and they carried out ruthless assassinations, which are known among themselves as engineering operations. These brutal assassinations targeted and killed more than 17,000 Iranian citizens, including the President and Prime Minister of Iran, Mohammad Ali Rajai, and Mohammad Bahonar, head of the judiciary, Ayatollah Beheshti, a number of MPs, ministers, and religious scholars. After failing to gain power and losing their social base in Iran and the invasion of the Iraqi Ba'athist regime to Iran, they sought refuge with Saddam and betrayed their own people and country by serving the enemy. The Mujahedin-e-Khalq attacked their own country in Operation Furuq Javidan, meaning the eternal light, and massacred a large number of ordinary people. They then faced the counterattack of Iran's armed forces in Operation Mersad and fled to Iraq with many casualties. After the Furuq Javidan operation and the First Persian Gulf War, allying with Saddam, they killed more than 4,000 Iraqi Kurds. The methods of killing people which were used by MEK members on killing Iraqi Kurds and Iranians got a true pattern for other terrorist groups, as we saw these kind of killings in ISIS terrorist activities. Today and tomorrow at the Conference of Terrorism, State and Non-State Sponsored Versions, we are at the service of thinkers from different countries to reveal the true face of the Mujahideen and other terrorist groups by examining the various aspects of these activities. On the first day of the conference, we are at the service of Dr. Ali Reza Abedini, Mohammad Reza Torabi, Senator Richard Black, Dr. Leonid Savin, Dr. Ozi Jazari, and Dr. Daniel Perra. Thank you.
On March 18, 2013, the Albanian government accepted 210 refugees who had for years been living in Iraq. 210 men and women, all divorced, non-Iraqi, with no children with them. They were all, however, connected to each other through an organization known as the MEK. The MEK was founded by 3 Iranian university students on the 6th of September 1965. Being influenced by leftist ideologies, the only solution to the emancipation of the Iranian masses, they argued, was armed struggle. 4 years later, the leaderships of MEK felt the group was ready to fight. Some of the members were sent to the Palestinian refugee camps in Jordan and Lebanon to receive military training. But before they were able to begin an armed assault, the Iranian intelligence service, known as the Savak, were tipped off to their plans. And in the spring of 1972, all the core members of the group, except one, were executed. Masoud Rajavi had his life spared in light of cooperating with the Savak. Instead, he was sentenced to life imprisonment. Rajavi was a skilled and compelling orator. This ability allowed him to gain a number of followers in prison. When Rajavi and his comrades were in prison, other members of the MEK killed several American officers through a number of terrorist attacks and officially declared themselves as a communist organization. The resulting international outcry in response to the attacks caused its members to be either detained, killed, or forced into hiding. This left the group to remain in name only. On February 11, 1979, the Iranian Revolution was successful in ousting the Shah's regime. A month earlier, Rajavi and several other political prisoners were released from jail. Rajavi saw the newly successful revolution as an opportunity to achieve power. But this idea could only be realized through resurrecting the MEK. Consequently, the MEK's governing council was established with Rajavi as its head. But the group needed to prove their revolutionary credentials so as to attract more members. Hence, they took ownership of the terrorist acts that were carried out, but they rejected those who claimed to be communists as members of the organization. Using the chaos of the early days of the revolution, the group occupied various properties, and through that acquired significant funds. They were also successful in seizing a sizable number of arms from the army and police buildings, all in the name of defending the budding revolution.
Pensez-vous que la lutte armée sera nécessaire pour obtenir cette victoire?
Ce que je sais pour avoir étudié l'histoire, c'est qu'il n'y a pas d'exemple où l'impérialisme ait quitté un pays sans avoir eu à affronter une lutte armée. Mais bien sûr, nous souhaitons que l'impérialisme quitte l'Iran sans que nous ayons besoin de recourir à cette lutte armée.
The members of the MEK believed that they were pioneers of the revolution in Iran, and that Rajavi's leadership gave their organization new life. New members of the organization viewed Rajavi as the sole remnant of the first generation of its leaders. Older members viewed him as the savior of the MEK. All viewed him as a leader who would guarantee their victory in the upcoming elections. But in the elections for the Council of Constitutional Experts and the Parliament, the organization as a whole met with bitter political defeats. Worst of all, Rajavi himself was not able to gain enough votes to win a seat. Rajavi now had to find another way to gain power in Iran. The president of Iran at the time was at odds with the Republican Party, the same group that dealt Rajavi an electoral defeat. This common political foe drew the two individuals closer together. This new political alliance did not bear any fruit, as the parliament soon voted to impeach the president, crushing Rajavi's hopes for power yet again. Rajavi chose a different strategy to deal with his political opponents. A week later, an explosion destroyed the Republican Party headquarters. 70 of its members, along with the party leader, were killed, removing this party from the political landscape. Contrary to Rajavi's calculations, the attack led to great sympathy for the deceased. A month after the attack, Rajavi fled the country in secret and gave the order to assassinate political leaders in Iran. He assumed armed struggle to be the only way to achieve power. On August 30th, 1981, the Prime Minister and President of Iran were killed by a bomb placed in their office. The attack did not yield the result Rajavi was looking for, and only made his organization more hated. Rajavi now tried a more drastic strategy. He ordered the killing of all pro-government civilians. No exceptions were made. As a result of the organization's armed struggle, its members were pursued and arrested. Seeing his organization facing extinction, Rajavi ordered its members to flee Iran for Iraq, and this while the war between Saddam and Iran was ongoing. Henceforth, Iraq became a safe haven for the organization. Toppling Iran's government was the common goal for Saddam and Rajavi.
نمیتونم و نباید در اینجا چرا اینکه مطلوب دشمنه و براش اعمال فشار میکنه سکوت یا بی‌طرفی پیشه بکنم. اعلان جنگ به دشمن ندم. فرمان تسلیح ندم و چنان که میگویند و میخواهند بی‌طرفی اتخاذ کنم. نه، این شایسته ما نیست.
This common goal resulted in 7,000 men and women from the MEK to serve in Saddam's army. Among their tasks was to function as spies and interrogate Iranian POWs. In Iraq, with the excuse of wartime conditions, Rajavi instituted a new set of rules for the organization. He banned the use of telephones, newspapers, television, and radio for all members. As a result, members of the organization were cut off from all forms of outside communication and only received information Rajavi had tailored for them. In late 1984, news of Rajavi's affair with the wife of one of his associates became a problematic issue for the organization. On February 28, 1985, Rajavi ordered his associate to divorce his wife Maryam so that he could marry her himself. His command went unopposed by the associate who claimed opposing Rajavi's path is worse than opposing the path of God. Rajavi called his marriage to Maryam an ideological revolution, and the couple together became the leadership for the organization. Around this time, Saddam had constructed a barracks for the organization which would serve as its headquarters. With funding and supplies from Saddam's Ba'athist government, Rajavi began organizing his own army. The ceasefire between Iran and Iraq after 8 years of war resulted in another defeat for Rajavi in his quest for power. Rajavi then decided to make use of his private army to attack Iran. He had convinced members of the MEK that the people of Iran were awaiting their arrival and they would reach Tehran within 48 hours. On Monday, July 25, 1988, Rajavi ordered his troops to commence the attack. Contrary to his claims, the Iranian people did not embrace his army's arrival. After 3 days, and the loss of 3,000 of its soldiers, his army retreated back to Iraq. This defeat caused members in the organization to doubt the Rajavi's leadership. To absolve himself from responsibility, he announced that the reason for the organization's defeat was due to sexual deviation within the ranks of his army. He instituted a new law for MEK members. All married couples were to divorce. Maryam Rajavi, in supporting him, said that the hearts of the organization's members must only be dedicated to the leadership of the organization.
بلاد فردی هرچی هستی باش. راست میگی ببین. بیا هرچی میتونی به رهبریت وصل بشو. اون را ذوب بشو. یعنی در واقع از این کانال اونطور خود فرد و فردیت رو تا اونجایی که امکان پذیر اتو کن له و لوردش کن. این راه رهایی از قید و بندهای فردیه.
The presence of children in the camp made this new law hard to enforce. America's attack on Iraq and the start of the Persian Gulf War provided Rajavi a solution. Under the pretext of protecting them from the dangers of war, the children were sent to camps in Germany and the Netherlands. Rajavi calculated that this would prevent the organization's members from getting distracted in carrying out the goals he and his wife had set for them.
این که من آدم خوبی باشم به تنهایی دینامیزم کافی برای حل مشکل فرد نیست. تو باید این مشکل تو حل کنی نه به دلیل اینکه آدم خوبی باشی. به این دلیل که ببین بتونی بار بیشتری برداری از این مقاومت، از این سازمان، از این ارتش آزادی بخش و از این رهبریش.
The Kurdish and Shia resistance to Saddam coincided with the attack by the American coalition. Rajavi, seeing the pressure on his ally Saddam mounting, sprung into action and ordered attacks to be carried out against the Kurds. Maryam Rajavi commanded the operation. This joint operation by the MEK and Saddam's army was successful and resulted in the killing of hundreds of thousands of people, much to the delight of Saddam. The killing of their Iraqi hosts did not sit well with a number of the organization's members. To quell the skepticism, Rajavi instituted a new law, self-criticism. Members were required to announce their most intimate thoughts in front of others. Months later, Maryam unveiled the next plan of the organization. High-ranking female members of the MEK were taken to her husband so they could achieve what she called oneness with him.
سال 79 من دیدم که خانم رجوی منو صدا زد، مریم رجوی، و گفت که امشب شب زفاف توه و شب معراج توه، تو قدرشناس قیمتی باش که مسئول برات داره. بعد من راهنمایی که به طرف اتاق خواب مسعود و من رفتم تو. وقتی که رفتم داخل این چیز رفتم اصلا در قفل میشد. یعنی عجیب بود که چه ساختمون چجوری طراحی شده. یعنی دیگه امکانی که بخوای از اون محل خارج بشی نبود.
In addition to this, Rajavi had all of the males removed from the organization's leadership council and established a new, female-only one in its place. Maryam Rajavi was placed at the head of this council. Opponents to this move were labeled as gender-biased and suppressed. In what was known as the security check, the opponents to this move were accused of spying for Iran, were tortured and sent to Abu Ghraib prison. Some of them did not survive.
انتخاب ما الزام آوره، یعنی میتونی اون رو ابلاغ و نوعی دستور با عرض معذرت تفسیر کنی. انتخابی هم که کردیم همین. آیا شما مجاز هستید از دید خودتون به لحاظ ایدئولوژیک، از دید خودتون و به لحاظ سیاسی تاریخی از دید همه ما، دید مشترک همه ما، آیا مجاز هستید بگویید نه؟
Rajavi assumed that the people in Iran were under pressure and could not choose their own president. And so he chose his wife Maryam to be Iran's president and gave her the title the Shining Sun.
بگذارید به منظور تایید مؤکد مصوبه شورا ابتدا از شما سوال بکنم. نظر شما با ریاست جمهوری مریم چیست؟ موافقید؟
But the widespread participation of the Iranian public in the subsequent presidential elections contradicted Rajavi's analysis of the situation in the country. To generate morale for his followers, he ordered terrorist attacks in Iran. The MEK launched several mortars indiscriminately that were met with international condemnation, putting the group under pressure. In 2003, on the verge of America's invasion of Iraq, in fear that his followers would take advantage of this opportunity to desert him, Rajavi announced that if they tried to escape, they would be killed by Iranian authorities. To further assure himself, he ordered his followers to destroy all personal belongings and eliminate any connections to their previous lives. With the American invasion of Iraq, Masoud and Maryam Rajavi fled from Iraq and found refuge in Europe. They ordered the remaining leadership of the MEK to open negotiations with the Americans and to ensure the Americans that they would cooperate. The MEK was considered a terrorist organization by the American government due to the attacks they had previously carried out. Rajavi's promises to combat the Iranian government and his lobbying certain American officials won the group the ability to remain in Iraq on the condition that they would disarm. On January 17, 2003, Maryam Rajavi and a number of members of her female entourage were arrested by French police for attempting to murder 25 ex-members of the organization. In order to avoid conviction in French courts, Maryam ordered members of the organization to burn themselves alive in front of police stations and public locations in France. The move put pressure on the French government, and as a result, Maryam was released. In the following years, the members of the organization that had remained in Iraq faced a big problem. The people of Iraq no longer wanted them in the country. America and European countries would not accept them either. Hence, America and the EU removed the MEK from the list of terrorist organizations in order to ease the relocation of its members as asylum-seeking refugees. Masoud Rajavi handed the leadership of the organization to Maryam and thereafter disappeared from the public eye. Now, the question is, which country is prepared to accept the MEK? On March 18, 2013, the Albanian government accepted 210 refugees who had lived in Iraq for years. 210 men and women who were non-Iraqi and were all transferred from a camp in Baghdad to Albania.
After steady progress over a period of months, I visited Tirana earlier this year, and I discussed with the Albanian government how to assist in facilitating the transfer and the resettlement of the last group of MEK members from Camp Liberty.
In 2016, the American government was able to convince the government of Albania to accept the remaining members of the MEK. Tirana became the new camp for members of the MEK, a camp in the heart of Europe. The inhabitants of this camp, based on the orders of Maryam, have laid down their weapons. Proud of their past, they are patiently waiting for their next mission.
Okay, thanks for watching. In this part, in the first day of the Conference of Terrorism, State and Non-State Sponsored Versions, the speakers of this part of the conference is Dr. Ireza Abedini, head of the Yasin think tank from Iran. We invite you to pay attention to his speech. Thank you.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحیم. در مسئله ترور و تروریسم ابتدا به ساکن ما باید تعریفی داشته باشیم از ترور، تروریسم و اهداف اون. ترور در معنای سنتی به معنای کشتن افراد یا فرد به دلایل سیاسی، مذهبی و یا مالی هستش که با اهداف سیاسی انجام میشه. معمولا فرد یا افراد کشته شده دارای مقام، شهرت و یا علایق ایدئولوژیک خاصی هستند که رایج‌ترین اون رو ما میتونیم در ترورهای مذهبی و همینطور در ترورهای سیاسی ببینیم. ریشه واژه ترور در زبان فارسی به معنای وحشت و وحشت افکنی هستش و در زبان انگلیسی با الهام گرفتن از ماجرای حسن صباح و حشاشین نام اساسین رو به خودش گرفته. تروریسم در کل به معنای استفاده از خشونت برای دستیابی به اهداف سیاسی و اعمال نفوذ و اعمال قدرت دولت‌های خارجی در یک دولت مورد نظر هستش و کلاً ترور یک عمل هستش و تروریسم یک فرایند هستش که از تروریسم ما به عنوان مکتب هم میتونیم یاد بکنیم. به فرد یا افرادی که به این مکتب باور داشته باشند، یعنی به مکتب تروریسم باور داشته باشند، تروریست گفته میشه. این افراد معمولاً برای رسیدن به اهداف خودشون دستورات مکتبی رو انجام میدند، مکتب تروریسم رو انجام میدند و عموماً مورد حمایت دولت‌های خارجی و متخاصم هستند. ما در بحث ترور یک تروریسم دولتی داریم و یک تروریسم غیر دولتی که اگر دولت‌ها بخوان در یک کشوری عملیات تروریستی انجام بدند، به اون کشور اعلام جنگ کردند، به همین دلیل هیچگاه خودشون رو در مخمصه قرار نمیدند و اعلام جنگی به کسی نمی‌کنند، به دولتی نمی‌کنند. از این روست که معمولاً دولت‌ها میان گروه‌های نیابتی رو درست می‌کنند و به تروریست ها رو تحت پوشش حمایت مالی، لوجستیکی و سیاسی خودشون قرار میدن. از این طریق تروریست ها، گروه های تروریستی و باورمندان به مکتب تروریسم، اینها در کشور مورد نظر میان اعمال تروریستی انجام میدن تا اون دولت به اهداف خودش که عموماً یا اعمال قدرت هست یا اعمال نفوذ هست و یا وادار کردن دولت منظور به تمکین هستش، این مسئله تروریستی انجام میشه. گاهی هم مسئله انتقام مطرح میشه یا واکنش به یک کنش سیاسی و حتی یک کنش اقتصادی. از این روز که ما هیچگاه و به هیچ وجهی تروریسم غیر دولتی نداریم. گروه های تروریستی و گروه های معتقد به مکتب تروریسم، اینها همشون وابستگان به دولت های مختلف هستند، چرا که تنها از این طریق هستش که اینها سرپا هستند و میتونن دست به اعمال خشونت‌آمیز و تروریستی بزنند. به عنوان مثال ما نمونه این حمایت های دولتی رو میتونیم در گروه تروریستی داعش ببینیم که مورد حمایت مستقیم عربستان سعودی، دولت ترکیه و دولت رژیم صهیونیستی بود و مورد حمایت غیر مستقیم دولت آمریکا. و همینطور میتونیم ما از حمایت‌های تروریسم غیر دولتی با حمایت‌های دولتی از گروه تروریستی منافقین یاد بکنیم که اینها در دوره حکومت بعث عراق تحت پوشش صدام بودند و از حمایت مالی و لوجستیکی و نظامی و سیاسی صدام برخوردار بودند و بعد از اون در کمپ لیبرتی از حمایت‌های آمریکا برخوردار بودند و همینطور الان هم در کمپ اشرف از حمایت‌های لوجستیکی، سیاسی و مالی دولت‌های مختلف، مخصوصا دولت آمریکا، رژیم صهیونیستی و دولت‌های اروپایی نظیر دولت فرانسه و آلمان قرار دارند. این منافقین به عنوان گروه‌های نیابتی تروریستی علاوه بر کشتن افراد در سطح جامعه، اقدامات جاسوسی دیگه‌ای هم دارند. از بحث دور نشیم، تروریسم دولتی به دخالت یک دولت در امور داخلی دولت دیگری تعریف میشه. هم میتونیم هم بگیم به دخالت دولت‌ها در امور داخلی یک دولتی. کما اینکه ما در قبل از پیروزی انقلاب اسلامی دخالت مستقیم آمریکا و انگلیس رو در امور داخلی ایران داشتیم، حتی تا انتصاب وزیران و انتصاب نمایندگان مجلس و مجلس سنا. اما در حال حاضر در داخل کشور ما این مسئله وجود نداره. به همین دلیل گروه‌های نیابتی تروریستی وجود دارند، نظیر حزب تضامن الاهوازیه، گروه تروریستی منافقین، حزب کومله، حزب دموکرات کردستان و همینطور جیش الظلم بلوچستان و من جمله میتوان گفت خلیفه خودخوانده سیستان و بلوچستان هم در این کاتگوری قرار میگیره. اما این عملکرد گروه‌های تروریستی تنها با حمایت‌های دولتی امکان پذیره و نمیتوان گفت که ما در حال حاضر یک تروریسم غیر دولتی داریم یا گروهی تروریستی غیر دولتی داریم. این وجود خارجی نداره. تمامی گروه‌های تروریستی الان همه تحت پوشش حمایت خارجی هستند. آخرین نمونهش همین 4 نفری بود که در 4 نفر عضو حزب کومله کردستان بود که در اصفهان اخیراً معدوم شدند به جرم بمبگذاری و اقدام علیه امنیت ملی. دولت‌های متخاصم تنها در موردی که دولت تروریست مطمئن باشد که اقدام تروریستیش هیچ هزینه‌ای براش نخواهد داشت مستقیما وارد عمل میشه. از این روز که ما میبینیم که رژیم صهیونیستی در اغتشاشات سال 88 از طریق فرقه تروریستی منافقین وارد شد، در اغتشاشات زن زندگی آزادی از طریق حزب دموکرات و حزب کومله کردستان وارد شد و همینطور در زمان جنگ ایران و عراق هم از طریق دولت عراق وارد شد. این در زمان جنگ ایران و عراق دولت بعث عراق یک دولت تروریستی بود که مستقیما وارد عمل شد با فرض به این که کل جهان از او حمایت میکنه. اما خود ترور و عمل ترور هم روش ها و شیوه های خاصی داره. در عمل ترور تأثیرگذار در حوزه براندازی و حوزه سرنگونی دولت ها که در مانیفست زعمای صهیون هم به وضوح اشاره شده، این مسئله عنوان میشه که در ترور برای سرنگونی و براندازی غیر نظامیان اهداف آگاهانه و اولیه عملیات های تروریستی هستند. ما از غیر نظامیانی میتونیم نام ببریم که مورد اهداف تروریستی بودند، که در سالهای اخیر همواره توسط اونها نظام رو محکوم کردند، ایران رو محکوم کردند. از جمله اونها هواپیمای اوکراینی است که فرقه تروریستی رجوی الان سوارشه. یا بهتر بگم فرقه تروریستی رجوی خونسوار کشته شدگان هواپیمای اوکراینی هست. از جمله اون میتونیم به ندا آقا سلطان اشاره کنیم، چهره دخترک معصومی که در سال 88 کشته شد توسط نیروهای ستاد داخلی منافقین و به نظام نسبت داده شد تا بتونن نظام رو مورد تحت فشار بذارن و اعمال قدرت بکنن و وادار به تمکین بکنند به آن چیزی که بعداً با حضور دولت آقای روحانی انجام پذیرفت. اما همینطور در اغتشاشات 96 98 و اغتشاشات اخیر زن زندگی آزادی، اینها همگی قربانیان ترور آگاهانه غیر نظامیان بودند برای تحریک افراد عادی به جهت ایجاد اغتشاش و تمکین نظام، با هدف تمکین نظام برای سرنهادن به آن چیزی که غرب میخواد. و نکته دومی که هدف دومی که ترور و تروریسم دنبال میکنه، مکتب تروریسم دنبال میکنه، مسئله ترور از طریق القاء وحشت و هراس از اقدامات تروریستی است. این مسئله در حوزه براندازی نمی گنجه، یعنی انجام نمیشه. این مسئله در حوزه در تصرف سرزمین در عراق توسط داعش انجام میشد که اینا با انتشار کلیپ ها این هراس و وحشت افکنی رو از ترور و تروریسم در دل مردم قرار دادن تا بتونن با کمترین هزینه شهرهای عراق و سوریه رو یکی پس از دیگری اشغال بکنند. و این القاء وحشت همیشه و همواره در جهت اهداف سیاسی بوده و هستش. کما اینکه ما همینک هم در سطح جهان القاء وحشت از تروریسم رو در خصوص مسلمانان میبینیم، مخصوصا در کشور فرانسه، کشوری که توهین به پیغمبر اسلام آزاد است و اعتراض به آن ممنوع. یا در کشور آلمان میبینیم که در کشور آلمان توهین به پیغمبر اسلام آزاد است، اما انتقاد هولوکاست و صحبت کردن و زیر سوال بردن هولوکاست ممنوع. این اهداف تروریستی همیشه هدفهای سیاسی رو دنبال کرده. به همین دلیل هستش که جامعه قربانی همواره تحت سیطره تروریسم باید بماند. ما علاوه بر تروریسم خشونت طلب که حذف فیزیکی انجام میده، ما ترور سیاسی داریم، ترور اقتصادی داریم، ترور فرهنگی داریم که ترور فرهنگی در چارچوب دکترین آنفلوانزای نیویورکی داره انجام میشه و همینطور بنده یک عبارتی رو جدید به جامعه ایران اهدا کردم به عنوان تروریسم شیر و خورشید. فارسی زبانانی که در خارج از کشور، اکثرا در خارج از کشور نشستند، یا در آلبانی هستند یا در یگان 8200 ارتش رژیم صهیونیستی هستند و یا برانداز سلطنت طلب هستند یا به هر دلیلی با جمهوری اسلامی ایران و با نظام سیاسی ایران مخالفند و این مخالفتشون تبدیل شده به مخالفت و دشمنی با مردم ایران و با کشته شدن مردم ایران اظهار خوشحالی و شادمانی میکنند. ما در حوادث اخیر حادثه تروریستی کرمان دیدیم این مسئله در فضای مجازی که خیلی ها بودن حتی در داخل کشور از کشته شدن هموطنانمان اظهار خوشحالی کردند. اینها کسانی هستند که مشوق جنایت هستند، مشوق ترور هستند و همواره مردم رو و افراد عادی رو تشویق میکنن به ترور، تشویق میکنن به جنایت و تشویق میکنن به خونریزی. این افراد معمولاً اکثریت قریب به اتفاقشون معتقد به پرچم شیر و خورشید هستند. برای نمونه ما گروه تروریستی منافقین رو داریم که همواره خشونت، ترویج خشونت میکنه و خواهان خشونت در داخل کشور هست. ما یک امیر عباس فخرآور رو داریم با کنگره ملی ایرانیانش که مروج خشونت و مروج جنگ به قول خودش پارتیزانی هستش. ما از کنم خدمتتون که رضا پهلوی رو داریم که بحث دفاع مشروع رو پیش کشید و جنگ مسلحانه که متعاقب اون جنگ مسلحانه در داخل کشور رو دامن خواهد زد. این دفاع مشروع در برابر جنایت و قتلی که نیروهای نیابتی دشمن در اغتشاشات انجام میدند و از طریق اعمال استراتژی کنش و واکنش، یعنی کنش و واکنش هر دو در دستان یک اتاق فکر هستش و این واکنش رو اینا تصمیم داشتن همانند سوریه مسلحانه بکنن که خوشبختانه در اغتشاشات زن زندگی آزادی این خنثی شد. اما مسئله دیگری که وجود داره مسئله مقابله با ترور هستش. ما در سازمان ملل و در کشورها در مسائل سیاست بین الملل چیزی به عنوان تعریفی برای ترور و مکتب تروریسم نداریم. به همین دلیل هستش که دولت‌ها هر کدومشون به زعم خودشون و با توجه به منافع ملی خودشون و بعضا قدرت طلبی خودشون میان بحث ترور و تروریسم رو پیش میکشن و کشورهای دیگر رو به این مسئله متهم میکنن. به درست یا غلط، به راست یا دروغ کشورهای دیگر رو متهم میکنن و یا اینکه همانند اغتشاشاتی که در ایران به وجود اومد خودشون در سطح کشور افراد عادی رو ترور میکنن و به نظام نسبت میدن و این مسئله تروریسم رو دولت و نظام رو متهم به تروریسم میکنن برای تحریم‌های بیشتر، برای پیشبرد منافع سیاسی خودشون به اهداف سیاسی خودشون. برای این مسئله بنده پیشنهاد میکنم به دستگاه سیاسی کشور که مسئله یا ماده قانونی بین المللی مسئله تروریسم و مقابله با ترور و تروریسم رو طراحی و تدوین بکنند و به سازمان ملل ارائه بدند. همینطور در داخل کشور متاسفانه ما مجازاتی برای مشوقین جنایت و حامیان تروریسم نداریم. ببینید فردی که افراد رو تشویق، بحث آمریت نیست، بحث عاملیت نیست، بحث تشویق، ایجاد انگیزه و محرک تروریسمه، انجام عملیات تروریستیه. افرادی که در داخل یا خارج از کشور، که عموما در خارج از کشور هستند و عموما در مقر اشرف در آلبانی یا در یگان 8200 رژیم صهیونیستی هستند، اینها عموما مشوقین جنایت هستند یا حتی سلطنت طلبها در کشورهای اروپایی، آمریکا و کانادا. اینها مشوقین جنایت هستند. اینا تشویق میکنن مردم رو به جنایت و آدمکشی و به قول یکی مثل امیر عباس فخرآور میاد و صحبت از جنگ پارتیزانی و آدمکشی میکنه. یکی مثل علی جوانمردی تروریست تجزیه طلب کرد میاد صحبت از تجزیه ایران و صحبت از خنثی‌سازی نیروهای نظامی و غیر نظامی در ایران میکنه به جهت ایجاد تحریک برای براندازی و برای شورش و اغتشاش. ما برای این افراد هیچ توجیه قانونی نداریم، یعنی هیچ مجازات قانونی نداریم. در قانون کشور ما این مسئله عنوان نشده و این مسئله نیامده در مجازات اسلامی که مشوق جنایت و محرک جنایت هم همانند آمر و عامل جنایت باید مجازات بشن، که این مجازات این افراد تحت تپه‌گرد قرار دادن این افراد قوانین کنوانسیون پناهندگی رو در سازمان ملل و ژنو خنثی میکنه. یعنی بر اساس قوانین جزایی بین المللی که در کنوانسیون ژنو هستش، در کنوانسیون پناهندگان هستش تصویب شده و همینطور در سازمان ملل و حتی بعضا در یک دو مورد دیدم در شورای امنیت همین مسئله عنوان شده. افرادی که در شورای امنیت در بخش خصوصی در بخش جناییش عنوان شده، فرد یا افرادی که توسط دولتی تحت پیگرد قانونی قرار میگیرند به دلیل قتلی که مرتکب شدند یا در پرونده قتل یا در پرونده جنایتی رد پاشون دیده شده و تحت تعقیب قضایی قرار میگیرند، این افراد دولت ها موظفن این افراد رو به کشور متبوع مسترد کنند، پس برگردونند برای مجازات و برای تحقیقات قضایی و جنایی. این شامل حال قوانین کنوانسیون ژنو نمی شود. یعنی کسانی که تحت پوشش کنوانسیون ژنو هستند، تحت پوشش کنوانسیون پناهندگان هستند، همونجوری که منافقین دارن ادعا میکنند، یا برخی سلطنت طلبان در ترکیه، در آلمان، در فرانسه، در انگلیس، در آمریکا، در استرالیا، در کانادا یا در کشورهای اسکاندیناوی مثل نروژ و سوئد و فنلاند دارن فعالیت میکنند و تشویق به جنایت میکنند، اینها را میتوان با تحت پیکرد قرار دادن در قوه قضاییه به کشور بازگرداند و محاکمه کرد. ما برای این مسئله هیچ تعریف و هیچ توجیهی و هیچ ماده قانونی نداریم که بنده پیشنهاد میکنم این ماده قانونی حتما اعمال بشه که این افراد میشه که این افراد رو به داخل کشور بازگردوند. انشالله روزی را خواهیم دید که در سرتاسر جهان، نه تنها در کشور ما بلکه در سرتاسر جهان، اثری از تروریسم نباشه و ریشه تروریسم که همان صهیونیسم بین الملل هست خشکانده بشه با نابودی رژیم صهیونیستی انشالله.
Okay, we thank for the valuable speech of Dr. Ali Reza Abedini, the head of Yasin think tank, who pointed out good and valuable points in his speech. The second speaker today is Mohammad Reza Torabi, one of the children of MBK members who left alone in Europe to live for his own. We invite you to hear his valuable speech.
این ویدیو رو برای این ضبط میکنم که فکر کنم مردم ایران مجاهدین خلق رو کم میشناسن و کم ازشون متنفرن و امیدوارم که با دیدن این ویدیو یکم بهتر مجاهدین رو بشناسید و بیشتر ازشون متنفر باشید. داستان شخصی خودمه. خب در مقدم بگم که من الان 6 سال از سازمان مجاهدین جدا شدم، یا بهتر بگم فرار کردم از دستشون، و من 18 سال از سن 16 سالگی تا سن 35 سالگی 18 سال عضو سازمان مجاهدین بودم. در سن 16 سالگی با بهانه اینکه بیا برو عراق پدر مادرت رو ببین، من از کانادا کشوندن به کمپشون تو عراق و اونجا دیگه گیر افتادم توی فرقه پلیدشون و حالا به اون بحثای مغزشویی و غیره. حالا فست فورورد بزنیم به 6 سال پیش که من می‌خواستم ازشون جدا بشم. مادر من که یکی از اعضای خیلی ایدئولوژیک سازمان مجاهدین هستش حسابی مخفی شده، مشخصا به دست مسعود مریم رجوی، اومد و با من یک نشست و گفتش که اگه تو از سازمان مجاهدین خارج بشی تو دیگه پسر من نیستی، تو خائنی و مزدوری و خلاصه جات تو جهنمه. این عقاید مجاهدین متاسفانه. و با من دیگه چیز کرد، قطع رابطه کرد و از لحظه‌ای که من از سازمان مجاهدین خارج شدم هیچ رابطه‌ای دیگه با مادرم نداشتم. خب همچنان تو ذهنم بود که تو این 6 سال که خب شاید مثلا نمیدونم دلش به حال من بسوزه یا به فکر من باشه یا این حرفا، این آرزوهای مثلا بچگانه تو ذهنم بود. ولی اخیراً یک از دوستام رفته بود آلبانی که مادرش اونجا ببینه تو کمپشون و برگشت و گفتش که مادرتو دیدم اونجا و گفتم خب برام بگو که چیکار میکنه، چه شکلی بود، چی گفت. گفتش که خب از اولش با من نشست و میخواست یه جوری منو مغزجویی کنه با این بحثای سیاسی و ایدئولوژیک خودشون و یه جا بحث همین بچهای کلن شد، چون من تو کلن آلمان زندگی میکنم و اینکه اینجا خب ما یک سریمون خیلی علنا علیه سازمان مجاهدین حرف میزنیم به خاطر اینکه تجربه تلخی داشتیم، تجربه تلخ شخصی داشتیم و گفتش که آره بچه کل این بچه ها همشون مزدوران جمهوری اسلامی هستن و از جمهوری اسلامی پول میگیرن که علیه سازمان مجاهدین حرف میزنن و میدونی پسر من دیگه پسر من نیست، من دیگه پسر ندارم. اینه که گفتش من چیز شدم واقعا. اولندش که خداش باشه که من پسرش باشم، من پسر 1 در میلیونم و مادر من به این که بگم هیچ وقت تو زندگیم نبودش و از بچگی راه خودش رو انتخاب کرد که دنبال روی مسعود و مریم رجوی باشه و نوچه اونا باشه و حالا بگذاریم. حالا میخوام اینو بگم که ببین یک زن که یک بچه رو تو این دنیا میاره چقدر توی ایدئولوژی و توی تشکیلات توی فرقه مجاهدین مخشویی شده که پسر خودشو، پسر تنی خودشو دیگه پسر خودش نمیدونه. چرا؟ چون این پسر که امروز من یک مردم و آزادانه انتخاب کردم که عقاید خودم رو داشته باشم و نه عقایدی که مجاهدین و رجوی به من تحمیل میکرد، به خاطر این من دیگه پسرش نیستم. یعنی ببینید مسعود و مریم رجوی با این دستگاه مخشویی خودشون در این فرقه پلیدشون چجوری انسانها رو از طبیعی ترین احساساتشون توهی میکنن و حالا همین مریم رجوی میاد میگه آزادی و حقوق بشر، بی شرف، خائن به وطن، به ایران، خائن به ایرانی، خائن به ارزش‌های انسانی، خائن به حقوق بشر. تو در درون تشکیلات و فرقه خودت اعضات پایه‌ای ترین حقوق رو ندارن و اینا مخشوش شدن و تویی شدن از ارزش‌های انسانی. پایه‌ای ترین رابطه مادر با فرزندش پایه‌ای ترین چیز در این دنیاست. هر کسی که فرزند داشته باشه، هر کسی که مادر داشته باشه اینو حس میکنه، اینو میدونه. تو این افراد از این احساس توهی کردی و دم از حقوق بشر و آزادی و دموکراسی میزنی. خائن. تو جات واقعا تو زندانه، جات اینه که یه روزی محاکمه بشی به خاطر این کارهایی که کردی و همچنان داری ادامه میدی. بنابراین حرفم با شما مردم ایران اینه که باور کنید مجاهدین خیلی کم میشناسید. مجاهدین خلق منفور نیستن، بد نیستن، فقط به خاطر اینکه کاسلیست صدام بودن و الان کاسلیست سیاست مدارای آمریکایی هستن. نه، مجاهدین خلق خیلی 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 بیشتر از این حرفا جنایت کردن و خیانت کردن، نه تنها به مردم ایران، به واقعا به انسانیت، و خیلی بیشتر جا داره که ازشون متنفر باشید. و من حتما تلاش میکنم که هر چقدر میتونم، هر چقدر در توان شخصی خودم هستش، از تجربیات خودم بیشتر بهتون بگم و بیشتر این فرقه پلید رو افشا بکنم تا اینکه مبادا کسی گول این ظاهرای این ظاهر و این دروغاشون رو تحت عنوان حقوق بشر و دموکراسی و الوبله رو بخوره.
We would like to express our gratitude to Muhammad Reza Torabi, who gave valuable speech on behalf of the children of MEK, which is one of the subjects that hit hard the terrorist group of MEK in recent years. Okay, the next person we have today is Senator Black from USA. Senator Richard Hayden Black, born May 15, 1944, is an American politician, a Republican. He served as a member of the Virginia State Senate, representing the 13th District, which encompasses parts of both Loudoun and Prince William counties from 2012 to 2020. And I invite you to pay attention to his very informative speech. Thank you.
Yes, the Central Intelligence Agency feels like the greatest victory that they ever had in their history was driving the Soviet Union from Afghanistan by Operation Cyclone, in which the U.S. worked together with Saudi Arabia. We fielded an army of 1/3 terrorists. We trained them in Wahhabism, the very violent version of Islam, and we did. We drove the Soviet Union from Afghanistan using this vast army. That gave rise to many bad things, including Al-Qaeda, which eventually flew the planes into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon on 9/11. But I think what happened is, because of this victory within the CIA, I think that they became rather addicted to employing terrorist groups as an instrument of foreign policy. And you can see that quite clearly within Syria, where we have been unwavering supporters of Al-Qaeda in Syria, even though Al-Qaeda were the ones who struck America on 9/11, and yet we have unwaveringly supported them because our objective is to overthrow the government of Syria. We really don't care how despicable a group is. Now, with the MEK, I have no doubt that the CIA works with the MEK in establishing this small town that they have, where they have some say now it's 4,000 people, whose sole purpose really is to train and to carry out actions against Iran. I don't like the idea of using terrorism as an instrument of American foreign policy. And yet I see it being done in a number of places. The MEK, they were on the terrorist list. They did a tremendous lobbying campaign. Some people got paid considerable amounts of money to come out publicly in favor of them, and eventually they were taken off the list of terrorist states. But if you look at the time, I think it was 2012 that they were delisted. As the time frame is very important, because we invaded Libya in 2011. We sent the CIA into Syria to commence the Syrian civil war several months later. So we're still into 2011. You look at 2012, see, we had this succession, and we know from General Wesley Clark, who made this quite amazing statement, that the Pentagon had been given orders to overthrow 7 Middle Eastern countries within the next 5 years. And I mean, there's excellent video on it's easily. It was overly ambitious because it assumed that there would not be any great resistance from people. But Iran was on that list. And if you can see, this was during the Obama administration, and Hillary Clinton was very involved in it. And they were putting in place all of these measures to begin to basically a general overthrow of a number of countries in the Middle East. They got stuck in Syria. They discovered that the people there were very resistant, and that created a barrier to their plans for Iran. But delisting MEK in 2012, remember 2011, 2012, it's all happening as part of this greater plan to overthrow these 7 countries. I think that perhaps the United States had limited options with Iran. And the MEK, it had a sort of a tainted reputation with the Iranian people because, you know, it had fought against Iran in the Iran-Iraq war, and people didn't appreciate that. I think the problem for the MEK is that that was an issue that united all Iranians, where they said, yeah, we're not going to speak in favor of a group that turned against our country when it was invaded by Iraq. So the MEK is it's a very tarnished organization. I don't think very effective, but I think the reason that it's favored is partly, you need to understand, American politicians don't have a depth of understanding about anything in the Middle East. They really don't. They're rather rare. But I think to them, they just, okay, the MEK, I hear through the grapevine that they're the opposition in Iran. So yeah, and besides, they're going to pay me $50,000 to give a speech. Hey, I can use the money. And so they give a speech, says, yeah, okay, MEK, they're great. But I don't see the MEK as being the future movers and shakers of political events that will be positive for Iran.
We would like to thank Senator Black for his speech that clearly showed how the United States are behind sponsoring the terrorist groups. Okay, the next speaker of today's conference is Dr. Leonid Savin. Dr. Leonid Savin is a philosophy doctor, a journalist, author, and the head of the Geopolitica news agency from Russia. We invite you to listen to his valuable speech.
My name is Leonid Savin. I am a representative of International Eurasian Movement, also chief editor of a think tank titled Geopolitica.ru, also an expert on geopolitics, conflicts, and one of topics that interested from my side is phenomenon of terrorism. Of course, when we talk about terrorism issues, first of all, we need to remind that this is a phenomenon that was born in epoch of modernity. It is product of French Revolution, because French revolutionary group started organized terror like a state policy. Then it was used of some political groups, small groups, weekend groups against the state. And for example, in Russian Empire, terrorism was used from side of anarchists, nihilists against the regime of emperor. And then again, it was used like state policy of Bolsheviks after a great social revolution in 1917. And then during the epoch of Cold War, during the bipolarity, we see that phenomenon of terrorism was used like very special asymmetric warfare or proxy warfare by some powers against another powers. And there was different motivations. There's religion motivation and political motivation. But first of all, we need to pay attention of main sponsor and special security on the special agencies like Central Intelligence Agency of United States that was used terror in Latin American countries and Asian countries and Africa, etc. And this connected phenomena of terrorism and national liberation movement. Of course, when war started in Afghanistan and Soviet Union get invitation from Afghan powers to assist, there was another side. There was Mojaheds, and we remember that Bin Laden was like image of freedom fighter in Western media. But then it was claimed like terrorist number one by United States, and we see that it's coin with two sides. So terrorism may be used like idea of freedom fighters, and then or before it may be used by like idea of just against the state, against democratic values, etc. But first of all, when we speak about how to combat terrorism, we need to see on this issue from position of sovereignty. For example, in Russia, in Islamic Republic of Iran, and other countries. And of course, we see that external powers like United States and other powers use different group to use for violent extremism inside our countries, and to demolish some infrastructure, etc. And Daesh, for example, in Middle East, of course, not possible to imagine it without support of some Western powers. And another phenomena we remember for last 20 years, probably it's so-called Wahhabi terrorism, supported by regime of Saudi Arabia and Russia and also in Iran. But now we see that it's not functional anymore. But we see another type of phenomena. For example, there was and still exists political group titled Mujahedin-e-Khalq in Iran. Most of this person was expelled from Iran, and from territory of Iraq they started military campaign against Islamic Revolution, and they get support and the technical assistance from regime of Saddam Hussein. And we see that it was used like para-army. So we see that was not a new phenomena during the Daesh regime in part of Syria and in part of Iraq, when terrorists used tanks and some techniques and doing like state actor. So it was before. And Mujahedin-e-Khalq used tanks and some artillery systems against Iran. Then this group was transformed, and main headquarters was based in Albania, and they started to use cyber war against Iran. So we see that terrorism may be use different levels of activity, from cyber activity, militant activity, political activity, sometimes religious activity, and prominent members of this group, Mujahedin-e-Khalq, also connected with high-level politicians in United States. It's against the symbol of support from the Western powers to start terror against the state that can be used openly. And there is also interesting phenomena connected with Ukraine and Zionist entity Israel. For example, when we see what happens in Ukraine and in Palestine, we see that Israel support regime of Ukraine, and regime of Ukraine support of Zionist regime. From first point of view, we can think that it's because both are satellites of Western powers, and United States and United Kingdom supported both, and Ukraine and Israel. But when we see historically, during the First World War and Civil War in Russia, there, for example, Zeev Zhabotinsky was connected with Simon Petlura from self-proclaimed state of Ukraine, and they cooperated. Then Zeev Zhabotinsky was a leader of militant Zionist movement, and till now we see that ideas of Zeev Zhabotinsky still used in Israel and both in Ukraine. So we see that sometimes terror phenomena is very connected and deeply rooted in the state agenda of some entities. So if to talk about How to combat it? Of course, we need to cooperate more, and Russia, Iran, other multipolar powers, and of course to spread information about methods and about philosophy of terrorist groups who acts against us.
Okay, we would like to thank Dr. Leonid Savin for his speech, which reveals different aspects of the terrorist groups and their activities. Okay, the next speaker of today's conference is Dr. Olsi Jazaki, the university professor, journalist, and commentator of the geopolitical issue from Malaysia. He has important speech that we invite you to listen carefully. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, dear friends of the Terror Spring Institute. First of all, I would like to thank you for inviting in your webinar with the title Terrorism, State and Non-State Sponsored Versions. Today in my short lecture, I'm going to lecture about the organization of MEK, or the Mojahedin-e-Khalq, the activities of this organization, a bit in the past and in the present. And I'm going to, in a way, show how the Mujahidins have been used, and they are used by the United States and Israel in order to attack Iran. Now, as many of you might already know, the Mujahidins, they are an old terrorist Iranian organization which was created since the era of the Shah of Iran. After the victory of the Islamic Revolution of Iran, the Mujahidins, they came in conflict with the Islamic Republic. They wanted to create their own version of utopian Stalinist state in Iran, for which they failed. After failing to do that, the Mujahidins, they declared a war against the Iranian state. While they fought against the Iranian government by killing its president and many ministers and state officials, the Mujahidins were later hosted by Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and after the US invasion of Iraq, a decade later, they were relocated to Albania. Now, with their relocation to Albania in the year 2016, the Mujahidins brought a new conflict to the state of Albania, conflict which Albania was never part of. And this was the conflict between American, Israeli, Zionist imperialism and the Iranian Islamic revival and revolution. After their relocation to Albania in 2016, when the Mujahidins were brought in the country by the then US Secretary of State, John Kerry, in Albania, we had to face a new reality, and that was a reality that Albania became a state sponsor and foster of a terrorist organization, which were the Mujahidins. After their relocation in the year 2017 and into 18, the Mujahidins, who when first they came to Albania, they came under the excuse of humanitarian refugees. They built a paramilitary camp in the village of Manza in the county of Durrës, and from their paramilitary camp known as Ashraf III, the Mujahidins, they organized themselves as a highly structured military organization whose mission and job was to fight against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Now, after their relocation to Albania, the Mujahideens, who at first were claimed to be 3,000, as of 2018, according to the data provided by the Albanian Institute of Statistics, Instat, it was shown that around 4,000 Mujahideens had entered in Albania. Now, while the Mujahideens were brought in Albania during the era of Obama administration, an era when the US administration had even the famous Iran nuclear deal, with the coming to power of President Trump in 2017, we will see a sudden transformation and radicalization of the Mujahideens, where while in 2016 they were portraying themselves as victims of Iranian persecution, from 2017 onwards, they will be weaponized by the new US administration. With the coming of Donald Trump to power, and for him hiring people like John Bolton as a national security advisor, the US administration will start to weaponize and use the Mujahideens in service of the Zionist agenda of the Trump administration. As we all know, after coming to power, one of the first acts that President Trump did was to tear off the Iran nuclear deal. After this, the administration of President Trump worked aggressively to, number one, move the embassy of the United States from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Number two, recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Number three, recognize Israeli invasions of the Golan Heights and the West Bank and other Arab and Islamic territories as being part of Israel. And the most important thing that the Trump administration did during its stay in power in the United States was to work towards the so-called Abrahamic Accords, through which Trump and his administration, they worked very hard to create an Arab Sunni coalition against Iran and Palestine. Now, from 2017 and onwards, the Mujahideens will be visited by countless Zionist Western politicians. So, Western politicians, from the ex-Canadian Prime Minister Harper to John Bolton to Patrick Kennedy to Howard Dean to Linda Chavez, all these Western politicians, which nowadays they are Israel supporters and support the Israeli genocide against Muslims and Christians of Palestine, these very same people will suddenly come to Albania and they will demand from the Albanian government of Edi Rama to, number one, support the Mujahideens against Iran, number two, to curtail the activities of Iran in the Balkans. So the Americans will start a full strategy of supporting Israel and making Iran lose its influence in Europe. A part of this campaign that the Americans will start will be, number one, a European-wide attack against Iranian institutions. We will have in Kosovo, in Albania, in Macedonia, Iranian NGOs, which will be attacked and closed. And on the other hand, the Mujahideens will be put into use to create fake news against Iran. The year 2018 has been probably the most important year or the climax of the war that the Mujahideens will wage against Iran in collaboration with Israeli Mossad. As we have shown, me, myself, and other journalists in the year 2018, the Mujahideens were planning to carry a false flag terrorist attack in Albania, whereby, in collaboration with Israeli Mossad, the Mujahideens were planning to do a car bombing somewhere in Tirana to assassinate some of their members and later to claim that this attack was carried by Iran. This information from within the Mujahideens, which was leaked out, was later conveyed to the Prime Minister and President of Albania in the time, and the Mujahideens failed to achieve that. Nevertheless, while the Mujahideens failed to carry a false flag terrorist attack against Iran, what they did is that in March 2018, when in Albania, the headquarters of the Bektashi community were organizing a congress about Imam Ali in Tirana, Albania, the Mujahideens, in collaboration with the US and Israeli embassy, they asked Albanian secret service and police to go and to detain two Iranian journalists who were covering the conference of Imam Ali. The Mujahideens claimed that these two journalists, they were terrorists who had come to Albania to make a car bombing against the band of Mariam Rajavi. The Albanian police who detained these two gentlemen searched them, found that they were genuine journalists, and they were left to go back to Iran. Nevertheless, this news, which the Mujahideens sent to the media in Albania, was published in some portals which Mujahideens ran from Albania and some news outlet which Mujahideens paid a lot of money. And this fake news was taken by Fox News and then Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, where Iran was falsely accused as carrying a terrorist attack against Albania. Then, after this false flag terrorist attack, on June 30, 2018, the Mujahideens, they made another trick. They tricked an Iranian diplomat, Assadullah Assadi, who was residing in Vienna, Austria, through two ex-Mujahideen members, Amir Sadouni and Nassime Naami, who, as the Belgian police claimed in the time, they had placed a bomb in the car of Assadullah Assadi. German prosecutors, in the time, they charged Assadi with activity as a foreign agent and conspiracy to commit murder by contacting the couple and planning to assassinate the Mujahideens. Well, this fact was never proven to be true, and Iran even responded in that time by claiming that this was a false flag ploy by the Mujahideens. But as we all know the story, poor Assadullah Assadi had to unjustly, even though he was a diplomat, be jailed in Belgium for many years. Now, when the Mujahideens made this false flag ploy against Iran, they, in this year, aggravated the tension between Europe and Iran. We had people like Rudy Giuliani, the personal lawyer and the confidant of President Donald Trump, who attended a MEC gathering in Paris, and there he called for regime change. Mujahideens, they were visited even by people like John McCain and John Bolton, who, by visiting their paramilitary camp in Albania and meeting with the leader of MEC, Mariam Rajavi, they made open calls for regime change against Iran. So the year 2018, 2019, 2020, we have a massive weaponization of the Mujahideens. What the Mujahideens do, number one is that they make false flag operations in Europe, and this was used as a tactic to scare the European public and to force European politicians to follow Trump and the US administration on cutting their diplomatic and economic relations with Iran. And the second thing that MEC wanted to do, MEC was used by Israel to put pressure on European politicians to blacklist Iranian government officials, and in particular the Revolutionary Guard, or IRGC, and to lobby on European governments to declare the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization. Now, for people like me who study and follow MEC, we know that MEC claims to be the Iranian opposition, even though they're not. They're a cult. They're a cult who run paramilitary terrorist camp in Albania, where they imprison and jail their members, and there is no democracy in this group. But the outer appearance which the MEC conveys to European and Western public is that Mariam Rajavi is a genuine Democrat who wants to bring democracy in Iran. But now the question is that while MEC claims that it wants to bring democracy to Iran, the question is why should MEC lobby Western governments to blacklist the IRGC? And the answer is simple. The IRGC is that Iranian institution which supports the liberation of Palestine, the so-called axis of resistance, which today operates in the Middle East in support of the Palestinians, like the Houthis in Iran, like the Islamic militias in Iraq and in Syria, like Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. They are all trained and supported by IRGC. Now the question is this: while Mariam Rajavi claims that she wants to bring democracy to Iran, why should she lobby European governments to blacklist IRGC? The question is simple. The Mujahideens, they do not work and act on behalf of democracy. They do not work and act on behalf of the people of Iran, but they work on behalf of the Israeli government. In March 2018, when we had two Iranian journalists attacked by MEC and claimed as if they were members of IRGC and terrorists who had come to Albania to kill them, and they were detained in the central police station of Albania, we had the Israeli ambassador who came to the same police station. And the Israeli ambassador was putting pressure on Albanian authorities to keep these people in jail. But there was no fact. So what we can see through the activity of the Mujahideens in Albania since their relocation in 2016 is that the Mujahideens are nothing more but a branch of Israeli Mossad, a fifth column which works in order to destroy Iran, to destroy the Islamic Republic, and to break the spirit of the Iranian nation and its support for the Palestinians. Now, as a result of MEC's activities, and I have to remind our viewers that something very important that MEC did after its relocation to Albania is its organization of the so-called Free Iran conferences. So we'll have Free Iran 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021. In these conferences that MEC will organize at first in Paris and later in Albania, the Mujahideens will invite and pay Western retired diplomats, Zionist supporters, people like Senator Joseph Lieberman, who will come to Albania. They will be paid, of course, a lot of money, and they will call for war against Iran. So the CIA, Mike Pompeo network, and Israeli Mossad from 2017 to 2021, they are going to weaponize the Mujahideens in order to pressure Europeans. I have to repeat, European governments, because they are very important. Europeans, they didn't want to go to war with Iran, like even today, because they see no interest in it. They will weaponize the Mujahideens in order to use them to brainwash and blackmail the European public with the so-called Iranian threat. For those of you who probably know about the Operation Gladio, which CIA carried in Europe during the Cold War, where you had fake terrorist attacks throughout Europe, and later on it was discovered and announced by one of the presidents of Italy that Operation Gladio was run by CIA. The Mujahideens were used by CIA from 2000 and Mossad from 2016 or 17 to 2021 to carry somehow what we have seen during the Cold War, the so-called Operation Gladio. The idea was to create fear, to create tension, and to create Islamophobia and Iranophobia in Europe. Now, thanks to the activity of the Mujahideens, to the fake news that they will produce. By the way, in the year 2020, I went to the Human Rights Council in Geneva of the United Nations, and when I entered there, I saw so many Mujahideens. And in 2018, when I was called at the European Parliament to give my testimony about the Mujahideens, I also saw their Mujahideens. Now, to enter in the United Nations and to enter in the European Parliament, you need to have a security clearance. And this security clearance can be offered to you only by governments or Western governments or NGOs which are affiliated with them. In the case of the Mujahideens, it is Israeli Mossad, Israeli lobby, and the Americans who provide security clearances for these Mujahideens who operate in Europe. What they were doing from 2017 to 2021, they were going to every office of every European MP or even UN institution and whatever, and giving them handouts with fake news, claiming as if in Iran you have some horrible mullahs who are killing and torturing and butchering the Iranians. So the Mujahideens were used by CIA and Mossad to wage, number one, psychological warfare against Iran. Another thing that the Mujahideens did very successfully was a wave of cyber attacks, which you friends in Iran know very well. You have such cyber attacks every month. And most of these cyber attacks came from Albania. Now, let me stop here and come back to what was the result of the pressure that the Mujahideens did in collaboration with the CIA against Iran from 2017 to 2021. As a result of their activity, we'll have in October 2018, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, in April 2019, United States, and in May 2023, Sweden, which will designate the RGC as a terrorist organization. Before this, they forced the European Parliament to carry a number of resolutions where the European Parliament is going to place RGC into a blacklist, not totally a terrorist organization. Now, coming back to the Mujahideens. With the change of the administration in the United States, with the coming of Joe Biden as the president, the new US administration will have some kind of policy changes towards Iran. The Biden administration knew very well that the enemies of the Biden administration, people from Rudy Giuliani to John Bolton, they were on payroll of the Mujahideens. But the Biden administration, they had different plans against Iran. Now, the change of policy which happened in the White House will alarm the Mujahideens. And as a result, in May 2022, they will invite Mike Pompeo in Albania to visit their camp, and in June 2022, they will visit Mike Pence to visit their camp. These visits were made in a way as a slap in the face by the Mujahideens, Israel, and the Trump lobby to the Biden administration, and to show to them that, look, Mujahideens are here, they're still important, we need to use them against Iran. Now, the Biden administration, who felt threatened and offended by what MEC, with many paid American agents they have in the United States and with Israel. So what the Biden administration did is that in July 2022, they alerted the US Embassy in Tirana, they alerted the Albanian government that the US government is aware of a potential threat targeting the Free Iran World Summit to be held near Durrës, Albania. Now, was there a threat from Iran? Most analysts, they believe that probably there was not. But the US administration, which was very worried by how Israel and the Trump officials were using the Mujahideens, they decided to cancel their Free Iran World Summit of the year 2022. Now, while the Americans ordered Albania to cancel their World Summit of 2022 against Iran, and as a result, we had the cancellation of many tickets and the event. We had people like Harper of Canada to British politicians who had to go back to their home countries. Now, what happens from July 2022? We see a kind of policy change of the Americans towards the Mujahideens. Now, this policy change will come parallel with a massive cyber hacking attack which will happen in Albania. Albania will come under massive cyber attacks in August and in September of the year 2022. Now, we do not know who carried on these attacks, but the US State Department, the administration of Prime Minister Edi Rama, they claim that the cyber attacks were sponsored and were organized by the Islamic Republic of Iran. As a result of these cyber attacks, the hackers, they were very powerful. They managed to take over Albania's ports and airports, official websites, etc. The Albanian government of Edi Rama, he ordered the embassy of the Islamic Republic of Iran to close and ordered its diplomatic staff to leave the country. Now, With the removal of the Iranian embassy from the country, the Albanian government fulfilled a request that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, had made to Albania since 2018. In 2018, Benjamin Netanyahu asked Edi Rama that if he wants Netanyahu to come to Albania, Albania has to get rid of the Iranian president. So in 2022, we have the pro-Zionist government of Edi Rama remove the Iranian embassy from the country, but at the same time, we have the cancellation of the summits that the Mujahideens were carrying in the country. Does this mean that this was the end of the Mujahideen activity? No. From 2022 to 20 of June 2023, the Mujahideens, they will continue to use their paramilitary camp in Manza as a source of espionage and cyber attacks against Iran. As a result of this, on June 2023, Albanian government will order the special court against corruption and organized crime, as well as anti-terror, counter-terrorism police, to raid the camp of the Mujahideens, where the Albanian government, or the Albanian courts actually, will confiscate many Mujahideen computers, which in the time was claimed that these computers were used to attack Iran. Now, from June 2023, the Albanian government claims that it has started to stop the political activity of the Mujahideens against Iran from Albania. Now, is this true? Not really. For people who have read the emails which the hackers of Homeland Security, they got from Albania's counterterrorism police, the chief of this police, Mr. Gledis Nano, he was in direct contact with the Mujahideens. Mujahideens were sending to Albanian counterterrorism police weekly, probably monthly reports about Iran's terrorist activity in the world. Now, for people who have gone through the emails of Mr. Gledis Nano, who was the head of the counterterrorism police, they have read that Albanian counterterrorism police is controlled by 3 centers. Number 1 is the U.S. Embassy in Tirana, U.S. Embassy in Sarajevo, and U.S. Embassy in Bulgaria. In Sarajevo and Bulgaria, Americans have special officials who deal with terrorism. What is terrorism? Means Islam, means Islamic resistance for liberation of Palestine. In these emails, you could read how these counterterrorism officials, they are instructing Albanian police how to persecute Muslim activists in the Balkans. Another source through which the counterterrorism police cooperates is Mossad. In the emails of Gledis Nano, someone can read how Mossad has a liaison officer who is working for the Times of Israel, I forgot his name, who he was also sending monthly reports to Albanian counterterrorism police about Israel's war against Arabs, Muslims, Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese, and Iranians. So Mossad instructs Albanian police whom to fight, who are the enemies. The other group of power or center which coordinates its action with the Albanian counterterrorism police are the Mujahideen. One Mujahideen, whose name is, I forgot his name, Najib Aga. He was a footballer, I think, in Iran a few years ago, and then he defected. This Najib Aga, whatever is his name, he instructs Albanian counterterrorism police how to attack Iranian citizens living in Albania. Now, the final point, apart from fighting against Iran, another major fight which the Mujahideens are going to wage after their relocation to Albania will be against Iranians. From the year 2016, every Iranian which passes through Albania is detained, searched, questioned, and his name is being sent to the Mujahideen camp. So if Mujahideen say that we need this man, Albanian authorities are going to detain him. If Mujahideens will think, oh, this man is an Iranian agent, Albanian authorities are going to arrest him. Now, a major fight that the Mujahideens are going to do in Albania after their relocation will be the fight against Albanian journalists like myself, whom they will claim that were Iranian agents, and against Iranian defectors. Since their relocation to Albania in 2016, about 1/6 of the Mujahideen, around 500 people, have defected the cult. Majority of these Iranians, they have escaped to Europe, but some of these Iranians were living in Albania. They had an organization called Asila. This organization was supporting Iranians to abandon the cult. Now, what the Mujahideens did is that they charged Asila as being a hub of Iranian terrorism. As a result, in 2022, they even bribed or forced, or I don't know how, Albanian counter-terrorism police and the Special Court Against Corruption, SPAC, to raid the offices of Asila. Even though Albanian authorities couldn't find anything illegal about them, what happened is that from 2022 to 2023, the Albanian authorities, because they couldn't jail these Iranians who had defected the cult, Albanian authorities started, number one, to cancel the residency permits of these Iranian defectors. These people had come to Albania as Mujahideens, but then later they abandoned them. And the Albanian authorities detained or put under administrative detention dozens of those Iranian defectors. Mariam Rajavi, who hated these people so much, she complained to Albanian authorities about them. Now, since Albanian authorities could not jail them because they were doing nothing illegal, they were not agents, they were free citizens who, of course, were going on YouTube, or people like Hassan Herani, they were going to BBC or Al Jazeera and showing to the Western public what Mariam Rajavi was doing in her camp. And because you cannot be jailed in Albania if you only talk and speak and say the truth, what Albanian authorities did, they canceled their residency permits and they jailed them without a court order in the detention centers of Albania. As a result, today that we're speaking, we have many of these defectors who have either left Albania or are in prison, and the few remaining of these defectors, they live in fear in Albania. So, since their relocation in 2017, the Mujahideens have been used by the Trump administration, CIA, and Mossad to attack Iran, to attack IRGC and the Axis of Resistance, which fights for the liberation of Palestine. MEC has been used to wage a psychological warfare against Iran in Europe and to isolate Iran from the rest of the world. This is what, of course, is an operation run by Mossad, like we had the Operation Gravio during the Cold War run by CIA. And the final point that the Mujahideens have done in these past years has been to attack and destroy the opposition to their cult in Albania by Iranian defectors and by journalists like myself who have gone to the media and have asked our government, what are you doing with these people? Okay, this was my speech. I'm sorry it took a bit long. I'd like to thank the Terror Spring Institute for inviting me and for giving me time to speak. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi.
Okay, we would like to thank Dr. Olsi Jazgir for his speech that clearly revealed the true face of MEK. Okay, the next speaker of today's conference is Dr. Daniel Perra, a journalist and analyst of geopolitical issues from Italy and one of the experts and researchers of American activities in Italy that I invite you to listen. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm very honored to have the possibility to speak in this important event. I personally believe that Italian people and Iranian people are close friends. Our people are historically friends. Unfortunately, some members, actually maybe the majority, of the Italian political elite do not think so. Why? Italy, unfortunately, is not a sovereign state. Italy cannot have an independent foreign policy. Italy is tied with the Atlantic Alliance, the NATO, and its territory is occupied by American military bases since 1945. Because of that, Italian political leaders are not allowed to pursue national interests. They have to follow orders, basically. They have to follow orders that come from Washington, D.C. And they can pursue national interest just if this interest is in line with the American interest. Nowadays, for instance, Italy is clearly on the side of Israel. We are speaking about a state actor that acts like a terrorist actor. Israel, killing women and children, is clearly an act of terrorism. Why is that? Why Italy is clearly on the side of a terrorist actor like Israel? Because Italy, some Italian energetic companies, but some interests in Gaza oil, gas fields, and they want to exploit them in cooperation with Israel. At the same time, making Israel an energetic power is a goal of the United States. Like that, Europe will reduce its dependence on Russian gas. So the goal of the United States is to reduce the dependence of Europe from Russian gas by making Israel an energetic power. So this is just an example in which state actors behave and act like terrorist actors to get their own geopolitical goals. And of course, this terrorist behavior is silenced by the Western media. Again, another example. An example of cooperation of state actors with terrorist groups, so non-state actors. The major party of Italy, the major party of the Italian government is Fratelli d'Italia, which means Brothers of Italy. It is supposed to be a national conservative party. There is a man in this party, his name is Giulio Terzi, which was a former Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Now Terzi is the advisor for foreign policy of the Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Well, Terzi is the main Italian sponsor of MEK, Mujahedin-e-Khalq. And he organized many conferences in the rooms of the Italian parliament to support MEK initiatives and to support MEK leader Mariam Rajavi. Terzi has also stated that MEK can be the potential core for a new Iranian government based on secularism, democracy, and gender equality. Obviously, I would laugh, but the thing is deadly serious, unfortunately. We know MEC. We know what MEC is. A terrorist group that is responsible for the death of thousands of Iranian civilians. They are not secular, they are a sort of religious cult, and the members have to pledge their trust, their belief in the Rajavi couple and in their actions. There is no democracy in MEC. All the power is in the hands of the Rajavis. And there is no gender equality, actually. In their base in Albania, for example, men and women are separated, and the only thing in common is that they are both brainwashed. At the same time, MEC is very good, really very good in branding themselves and lobbying with Western institutions. So again, we are witnessing a cooperation between state actors and terrorist actors to reach geopolitical goals. A Western geopolitical goal, which is the stabilization of the Islamic Republic of Iran. So there is a sort of confusion. I mean, we cannot recognize anymore the difference, the line that separates terrorism from a state actor which is supposed to operate in legal ways. I don't want to be naive. It's not the first time in history that something similar happens, but now it became explicit because West, again following its geopolitical goals, decides who is terrorist and who is not. Thank you.
We would like to thank Dr. Daniel Pereira for providing valuable information, each of which has a world of its own and may be unique in its own way. Okay, here on the first day of Terrorism, State and Non-State sponsored versions, we honor to have your attention and concerns. We hope that this conference can be an effective step in identifying the terrorist groups like MEK to the people of the world, and that the information presented in this conference can be used as evidence which can be used in international courts against those terrorist groups. I think it is necessary to express my gratitude and appreciation on behalf of the Terrorist Spring Institute for the speakers of and the participants in this international conference. In this section, we introduce the second day of terrorism, state and non-state sponsored versions. We will have the speech of Dr. Gergi Tanasi from Albania, Mr. Yaqub Meraji from France, Mr. Giulio Chinapi from Italy, Dr. Bubana Angelkovic from Serbia, Dr. Robert Fontina from Canada, Dr. Bashir Balah from Algeria, and Dr. Maria Morigi from Italy will express their points and will give their opinions on the subject of terrorism and the MEK terrorist group. Dear audiences, once again, we appreciate your presence on the first day of the conference, Terrorism State and Non-State Sponsored Versions, and we invite you to let us be your host tomorrow on the second day of the conference. Thank you very much and goodbye.